Welcome to the Data Hall YouTube channel. In this video, we are particularly going to focus on the reshape command. Now, why do we need a reshape command? First, we need to understand what is a wide form and what is a long form. So, when we have our data in wide format, then it would mean that, let's say we have yearly data, say for example balance sheet data for different firms. So we have our cross-sectional variable in rows, right? So we have one row for each cross-section, but the second dimension, which can be either a time dimension or it can be subgroup within the IDs, within the cross-sections, we have that subgroup in the column format. So in this case, we have the income level of different individuals for different years. So we have income for year 1980, 81 and 82. But the yearly data is in the column format, whereas our cross-sections are in the rows. Usually this kind of formats are difficult to work with. But when you download data from World Bank or IMF websites or some other sources, then you might get data in this format. You would have to convert it into a long format or long form, where we have all the cross sections and the years of all cross sections or subgroups of all the cross sections within the rows. So now instead of the income for year 80, 81 and 82 for first individual being in the column, we have them in the rows. This kind of format is easy to work with. So there are multiple problems that we might encounter when we have data in a wide format. We want to convert it into long format. Now what I have done is that there might be multiple situations where you would have to either use one solution or the other depending on the data you have. I've tried to cover all the situations that you might end up in. So we would start with how do we reshape when we have just one variable? What if we have multiple variables and we need to reshape? What if we have the numerical header, that is, instead of having INC80 in the header, in the column as a column name, we have numerical column names such as years or dates. We have multiple identifier. We have multiple variables, right? And what if the variable or the column header that we have is not in numerical format, it is in string format? And lastly, if the numerical column header do have certain special characters like full stop or backslash, forward slash, etc. So there are multiple situations, multiple examples, and I hope if you go through this video, you wouldn't need any other solution for the reshaping of your data. So let's start with the first one. So let me just change my working directory so it can simply get the data from there. You might not need to do this when you are working with your data set. So let's install a data set called Reshape1. This is the simple data that we can download from web views command. Let's come here. We see there are two variables. One is the income variable and the other is the UE variable, right? Unemployment variable. And then we have our cross-section variable. So because we are working with an example where we just have one variable, and this is the most simple example, so what I would do is I would drop this unemployment variable so we can have a data set, a simple data set to work with. So let's drop these three variables. Now we have a single variable. So how do we reshape it? So instead of first using the command, I would show you how to reshape the data from the menus. So click on data, then click on create and change data. Then there is an option for other variable transformation commands. And the first option is convert data between wide and long. This is what we are looking at. Click on it. You would get this dialog box. You need to check only one option which says long format from wide format. So we want to move from wide format into the long format. This is what we want to do. Then we would need to input the I variable. So the I variable is, remember, always the cross-section variable. In our case, the cross-section variable is ID. If you have firm level data, then your cross-section variable could be firm. If it is year country-wise data, then your cross-section variable, I variable, would be country. Okay. Now we are going to subsort identify the J option, right? So the J option is the new variable that would be created. Remember, the new variable would be the year variable that would be created because we have income for year 80, 81 and 82, and once it is converted into long format, there would be a variable which would hold this 80, 81 and 82 year. Okay. Then we use the base or stub name. So remember, what is stub name? So here you would see a pattern: INC 81, INC 80, 81 and 82. So the base is INC, right? So we would use the exact alphabets for the base name or the stub name, what this data call. Let's click OK. It would convert the data. Now you see you have a new variable which is the year variable. Let me show you the data in the editor window. So now we have converted the data into long format. We have our cross section. For each cross section we have 3 years, and we have the relevant income data with this income column. And this reshape command would give us some output. It would say that the number of observations when we were in wide format were 3, and now we have 9 observations, and that makes sense because we had 3 cross sections and each cross sections had 3 number of years of data. So 3 into 3 would be 9. The number of variables previously were 5, and now we have 4 variables, and that is because we had 3 INC variables. So 2 INC variables are dropped. And then a new variable is created of year, so we have 4. Okay, so this is a simple example of how to convert from wide format into the long format. And what if you wanted to go back? Then you would simply click again data, create and change, then again to convert data into wide format, and this would show you back to wide format. So previously, if you have reshaped, if you haven't used this command or this option, then you cannot use the other 2 options. So we previously have used this one. So if you wanted to go back to the wide format, we would simply check on this radio button. It says back to wide format. Click OK, and it would again move back to the wide format. The 3 variables that of INC we had would again be recreated. Let me show you the command and how does this command looks like. It says reshape, which is the command name. Then we tell the Stata where do we want to go. Do we want to go towards wide and we have already long format, or we want to go towards the long format? In this case, we already have wide data, wide form, and we want to go to long form. So we write the word where we want to move to. Then the stub name, which if you remember was INC, it is the base name, base alphabets, comma, we give the option of ID, which is the cross-sectional variable, then the name of the new variable that would be created. Now remember, when we are moving from wide to long format, it is not necessary to give the J option. This J option would just give us the year name, the name of the new variable that would be created. If we do not write this option, even then it would work. And how it would look like, you'd see that the same data had been created, and if I show you from the data editor, we have the same data that we had when we used the J option. Without using J option, the only difference would be that instead of having the name of the variable that we chose, Stata would assign a default variable name, which would be underscore J. Okay, so we have understood the basic idea. Let's move to how do we reshape if we have multiple variables. So let's again input the data. So we again get the reshape 1 data set, which we previously had, and we drop the unemployment variable, but in this case we wouldn't drop the unemployment variable, rather we would keep it. Okay, so now we have 2 variables. So how do we execute this? So first I would show you from this time from the command window. We write the command name, then we want to move to long form. We write the word long and the stub name of both the variable separated by space. So we write inc as before, then the second stub name, which is UE, right, comma, then the cross-sectional variable, and then the new variable that would be created. And let me again show you from the command window. The only difference this time would be that we would have to write 2 stub name, which would be inc and UE. So we have converted the data, and from the data view you can see we have 2 variables, inc and UE. If we again wanted to go back, then you know how to do it. So this is how simple it is. By the way, to go back to the white format, we can use reshape white, right? If we have first used the reshape command to convert the data, so it gets back to the same format that we previously had. Okay, so far the reshape commands seem quite simple, but let's say if we have something, this kind of a data set where you cannot see there is any base or stub, right? In previous example we had inc or UE as base, but in this case we do not have inc or UE as base. So how do we do this in this case? First we would have to change the data in the Excel to make it suitable for Stata. The way I do it is I always insert a new row, and I create a new header. The reason is for inserting a new row is that once I create the new header, I would be able to compare whether I have done it correctly or not. You could have done it directly over this row, but then you wouldn't be able to identify any mistake or error that you made. So how do I do it? I would give it a stub name. You can either write YEAR or simple Y, then 2000 and sorry, without the equal to sign. So if I drag my cursor over this box over here, it would convert into a dark cross sign. Hold the mouse left button and then drag it towards the end, and it would continuously create new values in a sequential manner. So now we have created a stub, and what we can do is simply copy and paste this stub over here and drop this line, and we can now import this data to Stata, and we have a stub or the base value. But let's go back, let's undo this all. What if these numbers were not in sequence, these years were not in sequence? Then if we drag this, it would give us a sequential number of 2006, but once comparing it with the original data, it would clearly give us an idea that we just made an error. In this case, what we can do, let me delete this first. What we can do is enter equal to sign, then write within inverted commas, write y, then symbolic AND, which would be shift 7, and then we select this cell that holds our data. We press enter, and now once we drag, what it is doing is, let me explain this command to you. We are saying that enter a string or a Y alphabet, then AND is used as a connector in Excel, then input the value whatever is in B2 cell. Once we drag it, it would automatically shift the cell numbers because we are using relative formula. So once we have them, we copy them and paste special using this values and delete the first row. So we have our data set. Let's save this data. Let's again move back to Stata, and now we are going to import this data set. How do you import this Excel file? Click on File, Import, then Excel, because we have Excel sheet. Browse the data, and our data is in E, and we are using this reshape command. So this is our data. Click Open. It would give us different worksheets. The current worksheets we want to import is numerical header. We say import first row as variable name. Press OK, and it is asking us that there is some data in the memory. Do you want to lose it? Yes. We have our data set. From there on, it is a simple same reshape command that we used earlier. We write the command name, the word long because we want to move to long, the stub name, which in this case is just Y, the ID variable is symbol, and remember it is not necessary to enter J, but it is convenient because it would give us the same variable name as we want it. In this case it is yearly data, so our new variable would be year. Execute this command and we see that we have our data. If I show it from the data view, so we have our cross sections. For each cross section we have data from 2000 to 2010. The missing data is between 5 and 9. So we have understood these three examples. Let's see if we have multiple unique identifier. And what do we mean by multiple unique identifier? So in all the previous examples, we had just a unique identifier, which was a company name or an ID. But let's say our data set have two unique identifiers. Let me input this data. This time we are using a Reshape 2 data set. And in this Reshape 2 data set, if we look at the data, then this ID do not uniquely identify a data. It is not the unique identifier. So we have 2 over 2 times, but the first 2 is for the gender is 1, whereas in case of the second 2 the gender is 0. So anyhow, whenever there is a repeated cross-sectional variable, and if we simply input the ID variable in the I section, in the I parenthesis, in I option, then it would give us an error. Let me show you what the error would look like. And if you get this error, you would quickly have an idea what mistake did you made. So if we just give ID, which do not uniquely identify the cross sections, Stata would say that variable ID do not uniquely identify the observation. So either you made a mistake and there is duplicate data in your data file, you would have to clean the data, or it is just that the data, the format of the data is such that there would be multiple identifier. So in this case, we have 2 identifier. We simply write 2 identifiers in the I option, and the rest is same. So we have got our data, and now if we look at the data set, it would for this ID2 we have sex equal to 0 and sex equal to 1, and for each sex we have 3 years of data. Okay, so let's move to another example where we have multiple variable example data set. So in this case we have multiple variables. So let me show you this data from the Excel file. This is how the data might look like. You might download the data from IFS or some other website where you would get, for each firm you would have 2 variables, and these variables would be stacked one after another. In this case our usual command of reshape might not work, although we have already converted the year into the we have assigned the base value to it. If you haven't assigned it, you would first have to assign the base value or the stub to your data, to your headers, and then you would have to use the command. But let's say if our data looks like this, we have different firms and we have different variables stacked one over another, or we have different countries data, and for each country we have multiple variables data stacked over one another. How do we so let's first import this time. Instead of importing it from the menus, let me import it from directly from the command. So import Excel. So this imports the data. Let me show you this in the data view. We have 2 variables for each firm, right? So this is the firm first and the second firm, and so on and so forth. For each variable, for each firm we have data for 2 variables. Okay. We write the reshape command. We want to move towards long. The stub name is in this case capital Y. It is case sensitive, so you have to give exact stub name or the base name. Then within the I we have 2 identifiers, so symbol and the description. The description holds the variable names and the rest is same. So if I show you the data, so now we have converted this data. So we have this first firm and the total liability data for each year. For the same firm we have total assets data for all the years. Okay, so let's cover these 2 examples in our next video. Thanks for watching it.